Okay, we're gonna start with this clip because we can pretty clearly see one of the more important things about turning somebody with a claw when you like use it in a crab ride. All right, and we're gonna see it in every clip from here to the end of the video. So what I mean is, as either before or as you roll the guy through in your crab, you're getting shoulder deep in the guy's armpit. So you can see how Dake's shoulder's all the way under Montel's armpit, and he gets his hand down his back as far as he can. All right, now what this allows to happen is create this perpendicular angle with Dake's body and Montel's body, which is what you need to turn the guy in crab. All right, with a claw. With a half, it's different. We're gonna take a look at that too. But with a claw, if the guy gets perpendicular, you should be able to get at least a 2 count. All right, it's not the easiest position to hold, but you're going to be able to hold him long enough to get your points. Because as he rolls through, Montel's back is going to be exposed to the mat, and Dake's going to be off to the side. So as we go, we see Dake's shoulders starting to turn this way, Montel's shoulders starting to turn towards the mat. Shoulder still deep in the guy's armpit, hand coming down his back as we go through. And that's a bad angle, but he holds him just long enough for a 2 count and then gets back on top. And this was counterintuitive to me at first, because when I think of getting a claw on top, I think of dropping my shoulder deep first, get my hand as deep as it can, and then taking my shoulder and putting it back on top of his back. That way I've got a secure ride, right? But in a claw, it's different. You want shoulder deep, and I'm not going to say you want to be loose, but it almost feels like you're falling off the side a little bit. All right, so as he goes, he keeps that shoulder in his armpit and rolls him through. In this clip, he kind of goes from a mat return, but we're still going to see the same things with that shoulder deep in the armpit and that perpendicular angle. There's one little piece of this clip that I want to point out also. So as he goes through, we see very similar position to the first clip, where shoulders are kind of in this line. This guy's shoulders are pretty perpendicular to it. And that's what you're looking for if you want to get back points with a claw on a crab ride position. All right. So as he goes through, the guy's back's exposed to the mat, and he's able to get his 2 count and come back on top. Now the part that I want to talk about for this clip, so there's a lot of ways to keep this perpendicular angle depending on what the top guy does. And here, instead of covering distance with his roll, the guy with the claw kind of rotates at one point almost underneath himself to get this guy's back toward the mat. So we'll see him like move right across this point where he doesn't cover any more distance going this direction. It almost moves backwards a little bit, right? So I kind of started calling this the trapdoor effect. So if you got your good perpendicular angle, you're pretty safe to keep rolling this direction with some distance. If the guy's fighting hard into you and he's starting to get his angle back, or like going chest to chest a little bit more, if you kind of pivot out of the way or like in the same spot a little bit, it kind of makes a trap door where he falls straight through to the mat. In this clip, this is Jesse Jansen in high school, actually. He's known for a half on his crab ride, but we'll see later on how if you go half in this kind of position, this perpendicular position, where you can get into some trouble. So on claw, again, take a look. So shoulder deep and this kind of perpendicular angle with their bodies. On claw, when the guy fights away from you, so let me go through this. So if he fights this direction, it's not that much of an issue. All right, as long as you have something controlling his hips and you keep your claw. All right, so fighting away is not much of an issue. You should be able to hold him on his back. Again, if you have something controlling his hips and keeping the claw. The problem that happens with claw sometimes, and you got to be careful of, is when the guy fights back into you. We see him fight back into him first on this clip. So right here, this guy is really fighting hard to not get rolled through, going back this direction, which will create that perpendicular angle also. But there's lots of ways to adjust to this. Here, Jansen's great at using his foot to manipulate this guy's top leg as he goes through. You see him kind of lifting it up. So if this guy's able to get his legs over Jansen's body, it's a pretty bad spot. So lifting this guy's leg, plus I'm pretty certain that might be Jansen's foot right there. Let's back it up a little bit. Actually, I don't think that's Jansen's foot. I think that's this person in the bleacher's foot. But here, that's Jansen's foot. So he also bumps the guy's bottom leg out to stop him from bridging back into him. All right. So to stop this fight in, Jansen's lifting top leg and not letting him hop over any further. And he's going to do a little bit of a hip pull. And we can't see it right here, but I would imagine he kicks his bottom leg out on that far side. So we're going to see a little hip pull. Keep this leg elevated so the guy can't come back in. And then push with your claw hand. And it should get the guy to go right over toward his back. And again, fighting away typically isn't an issue. We see he doesn't actually have a lot of hip control, like in what I would consider a normal crab ride type position where you pinch your knees and are able to keep the guy's hips in your lap. It's not as big of an issue in claw because if the guy fights away, you're able to just hold him. All right, especially if you have his bottom hand's on his hip right now. He has that bottom hip control. Right, so the guy fights away, and then actually as he goes through to establish more control on his hips, he's going to pinch with this top knee to stop him from fighting away down to his base. And then something you're able to do in claw also is hop over top of the guy, especially if he fights in. See, he started to hop over top. He's covering his body with his leg. In this clip, same type of position as the last one, where the guy fights in early. This is another option to come back on top. So in the last clip, Jansen was able to keep the guy's body between his knees for the most part the whole time. On this one, we see as the guy fights in hard, again, just quick reminder, kind of that perpendicular angle with the guy's shoulders. The shoulders are more like this. This guy's shoulders more like that. Still perpendicular angle, shoulder deep. So on this one, the guy's fighting in again early, but instead he starts to get his leg over top and outside of this guy's knee, and it's going to be really hard to recover that position to get to a turn anyway. So instead of trying to hold the position to get a turn, he's just going to bridge, pop his hips, and get back on top to try and turn again later on. All right. So if the guy kind of gets outside of your back knee, so he fights in this direction and kind of high legs over and gets over top, one option is to bridge and come back on top. In this clip, we're going to see the guy fight in again and try and high leg over. Now, this time, instead of bridging all the way through, he's going to notice that he gets beat. Really soon we see this is the top guy's knee in between this guy's legs. All right. And if that happens, it's going to be pretty hard to bridge into a safe spot. All right, so he's got him pretty beat here. So instead of trying to commit to rolling him through or bridging through, he's going to scoot his hips back out the other direction and pull this guy back down to the mat, and then try and recover his hips back on top. And we see this guy try and high leg again as he comes over. Top guy releases pressure. And just covers on top. All right, so if you keep him inside your knees, pretty safe to go look for a turn. If he gets outside your knees, you feel in danger, but you've got him more going over to the far side angle, the back side, then bridge is probably a good option to bail. If you're kind of stuck 50-50 right here and your knee is between the guy's legs, and scooting your hips out to try and recover to get back on top is a good option also. In this clip, we can see where staying with a half or like a shoulder hook when you're at a perpendicular angle is risky. All right, the guy's able to move and turn into you. All right, so also just not a big fan of how he got to the crab position here, but we'll leave that for another day. So he stays with this shoulder hook, shallow half type position. Now, as this guy fights in, they end up at this perpendicular angle. So this guy's shoulders, top guy's shoulders. Now because he stays with this shoulder hook and doesn't switch to claw, this guy's able to move his shoulders over top and kind of put this guy in some danger. All right. So all he's got is his shoulder right here. This guy can move his arm and the top side of his body. All right. So switching to claw even now would probably be okay. Switch to claw, scoot this direction, guy's back falls to the mat. Man, that last arrow was bad. Guy's back falls to the mat. And he almost gets him through, right? Even here, if he switches to claw, he'd be okay. All right, but this guy is able to pick this shoulder up and fight into him. still. And he does end up back on top, but switching to claw would kind of take away the fight of fighting back in to the guy in that position. All right, in this next clip, we'll see where that actually happens. All right, so in this clip, we're going to see him start with a shoulder hook or shallow half position and switch to a claw when the guy fights in and creates the perpendicular angle. All right, then he actually switches back to half to try and pin him. But so as he starts to go, he's got this shallow shoulder hook position, shallow half position. As he pulls, he still hasn't switched to claw yet. They're still a little bit parallel. The angle's not quite perpendicular, which again doesn't have to be perfect perpendicular, but just the easiest way to explain it. As this guy fights into him, we can see him being able to use his arm, and then top guy is going to take his shallow shoulder hook, wrap it around to a claw right there to stop his fight. All right. It kind of traps the guy's arm between your shoulder and your ear, and it makes it really hard for him to use it. Right? There's not a lot of space in there where he can move. Right? Whereas when you're shoulder hooked, he's able to kind of move his shoulder and arm different places and kind of make it loose. But claw, way different. See, that's kind of trapped on top of the top guy's head. And I believe the top guy has backside wrist, which means he doesn't have a tight waist, right? So he's got to use something else to control the bottom guy's hips. So here he puts a leg in to control his hips from turning away. This guy tries to fight in, uses that claw and a little foot kick. Back it up a little bit. Right there. So this is the bottom guy's foot trying to fight into him. As he fights in, top guy's going to use his foot to kick this guy's leg out. Right there. See? Gets his leg off the mat. Now he has no bridge to fight back into him. No choice but to go. My arrows are bad today. But to go this direction toward his back. And here the top guy kind of hops over his hips. To get some control. And as the guy fights down, he's going to pull him back again, switch to a half, and then look to pin him. So I mentioned briefly in the last clip about controlling the guy's hips, either with your hand or with your leg coming in. In this clip, he switches too early to try and switches his hands too early to try and put a leg in, and the guy ends up reversing him when he fights into him. So as we go through, okay, so he's got tight waist, pretty low, controlling the guy's hips, and he's got claw controlling the guy's upper body. As he goes through here, he scoots away, right, to make this guy's back fall towards the mat. Now starts to put his leg in. Switches his bottom arm up high to a side headlock too early. And also misses his foot kick to stop this guy's bridge. And this guy's able to hop over. Alright, so he let his hips get a little loose by rushing, putting his leg in and switching his hands up high to that side headlock position, and also missed his foot kick to stop this guy's high bridge right here. He puts his foot right behind this guy's calf, just pushes it straight, pushes the other guy's leg straight, not his leg straight. His leg goes straight, that's not good for him. The top guy, I mean. This guy's able to high bridge. And also, we'll see in the next clip actually, how this position can kind of be recovered if your head is in the right spot, which is just interesting in itself. It's not exactly related to claw position, but it is something that happened. All right, so starts his shoulder off deep for this claw. Actually gets his hips down facing the mat. Doesn't have too much control of the lower half of this guy's body. As this guy starts to bridge, similar-ish position, but top guy's head is underneath his back instead of, in the last clip, it was up by the guy's head. He's already switched to this kind of side headlock position. He's also blocking this guy's shoulder from moving with his forearm and blocking this guy's head from fully bridging with his own head. And so as they keep fighting, he's going to be able to pull this guy all the way back over just because of the pivot points of his own head and his forearm. And as he pulls him back over, leg comes in to control his hips. Bottom foot is going to shoot out this direction to stop the momentum of this guy bridging away. Just an interesting position all around. That's why I included it here. Hopefully we learned something about claw today. I know watching all this stuff I did. So thanks for watching.